Well, now the recording has begun. Shall we begin with the prayer of Lord's
Yes,
Prayer?
thank you.
Yeah. In the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Our Lord who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. And deliver us from the evil one. For thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, now and ever and unto the ages of ages. Amen.
Amen.
Okay, let's relax and see how it goes. um, Last week, I just gave an introductory talk about my background. This week, we're getting into some serious stuff. I'll start by saying one thing about Hinduism to remember, that it's not a monolithic religion. It has been compared to a great banyan tree. The sturdy main trunk of a banyan tree puts out a lot of branches which form what is called adventitious roots, from which several subsidiary trees form. It's this complex system that enables Hindus to be monotheists as well as polytheists at the same time, much to the bewilderment of outsiders. There is a unity as well as a diversity. There are some very ancient traditions and some very new traditions that align with each other or even oppose each other. How does one pick one's way through this complex and ever expanding grid for any comparative study? Well, in my book, The Human Icon, I've taken a thematic approach. It enabled me to explore in depth what Hinduism offers by way of answers to some very basic questions. One such basic question is, what does it mean to be a human person? What is the understanding of the relationship between the physical and spiritual components of a human being in Hindu and Orthodox Christian faiths? Is there any common ground, or are they so far apart that we have nothing to share? To discuss these queries, I will first sketch the basic Hindu ideas about being human, and then follow with an account of answers given to the same question by Orthodox Christianity. Let me begin with the Bhagavad Gita. As you know, this long philosophical poem in the Mahabharata is for many Hindus a highly valued spiritual guidebook. The context is a great battle, which many Hindus, Gandhi for instance, see as a metaphor for life itself, representing the struggle between good and evil. The Gita offers advice on how to cope with grief, suffering, death, and afterlife, etc. Krishna, who is Arjuna's charioteer, but he's also his mentor, his guru, and Lord, he gives the answers in terms of three yogas: Jnana Yoga, the discipline of knowledge; Karma Yoga, the discipline of works; and Bhakti Yoga, the discipline of devoted love. Before Krishna expounds these three ways, he consoles the grief-struck Arjuna by explaining to him why he should not grieve about having to fight against his own kith and kin and sending them to their death. This is what he says. Just to get a feel of why Hindus like it so much, I'll quote the Sanskrit and then translate it, which is flashed up on the screen. Antavanta ime deha nityasyokta sharirena anashino aprameyasya tasmadyudyasva bharata vasamsi jirneni yata vihaya navani grihnati nashoparani tata sharirani vihaya jirnanyani syamyati navani dehi avyoktayamachinteyo yamavikaryamuchyate tasmadevam viditvainam nanushositamarhasi. Translation is, My screen is playing me up. I have to do something. 1 second, please. I'll get rid of that. Yeah. Let me quote the translation. The indwelling spirit, soul, is imperishable, immeasurable, and eternal, but bodies are perishable. Therefore, fight. Just as a person throws away worn-out clothes and puts on new ones, so does the soul cast off worn-out bodies and enter new ones. Unmanifest, unthinkable, immutable, it is called. Then realize it thus and do not grieve about it. Now, the Bhagavad Gita's teachings, the second slide, please. The Bhagavad Gita's teachings draw from two branches of the banyan tree, Vedanta and Samkhya. Both are two separate and distinct components. The Samkhya system is built around the disparity between, quote, spiritual overseer, Purusha, and material nature, Prakriti, where Vedanta presents the imperishable Atman as totally detached from the perishable body. A typical Vedantic view of the body is voiced by the Hindu sage Ramana Maharshi. In old age, he was afflicted with cancer. His doctors wanted to amputate his left arm to limit the malignancy of his cancer. But the sage responded, this is what he said, "There is no need for alarm. The body itself is a disease. Let it have its natural end. Why mutilate it? Simple dressing of the affected area is enough. It's for us to witness all that happens." Note that word witness. Like the Purusha, the spiritual overseer of Samkhya philosophy, this guru was detaching himself from his body. His message to his distressed disciples was characteristically Vedantic. I quote, "They take this body of Bhagwan and attribute suffering to him. What a pity. They are despondent that Bhagwan is getting rid of non-existent misery and attaining bliss, which is the only existence, which is the definition, moksha." However, you will see all around in India, people are beautiful, graceful, and in everyday life, Hindus perform various rituals sourced from the Vedas for birth, marriage, pregnancy, and commemoration of ancestors, and so on. They live by a very strong sacramental view of the world. Yet, this life-affirming aspect of Hinduism is compromised and even rejected by Hindu notions of salvation, which is to be liberated from the body. Now back to Krishna. Krishna's consolation strategy rests on urging Arjuna to recognize this dualism. He says, we all have a body which is perishable and Atman which is imperishable. Atman is commonly referred to as soul, but it's better transcribed as self, for it refers to the inner spiritual core of our being. According to Krishna, this body of ours is just a transient container for the Atman. I call it the karma carrier. Atman is immortal and imperishable, so Arjuna should not grieve because death can only destroy the body but not the Atman. Now, Hindu notions of salvation rest on this view that the Atman has nothing whatsoever to do with the body. The body is subject to suffering, evil, pleasure, pain, etc. But the true self, the Atman, is never contaminated by any of this. According to our karma, which is the invisible residue of our actions, good and bad, our Atman is simply relocated after death in a new body. The double concept of karma and rebirth governs Hindu views of a human being, which always see salvation as release from the cycle of births into a state of transcendental bliss. As one scholar, next slide please, as one scholar put it, Hindu notions of emancipation, the next slide please, are grounded on the fact that in reality, Atman has no relation whatsoever with what is of the body, with history, with worldly existence. Only the separation of the body and the soul implies the possibility of emancipation, which is reached through knowledge. For had the soul by its nature and essence any inclination towards being united with a body, it could not be emancipated from it. The last remark anticipates the Christian view of the general resurrection, where the body is expected to be reunited with the soul, which had been severed unnaturally by death. And therefore, death is our real enemy. I'll come to this now, this idea of the body and soul reunion. Orthodox Christian anthropology has certain key features that not only explain why karmic concept of rebirth must be rejected for a Christian, it also poses an implicit challenge to the whole Hindu understanding of what it means to be human. First, there is the uniqueness of the individual. Orthodox Christian teaching lays great stress on the biblical description of human beings, that we are made in the image of God. Now, there have been various attempts to explain this, but my own approach is to say it's best understood if we look at Christ. We believe Christ is fully human, fully divine, and that we are called to participate, not just imitate, to participate in his life. That will make us truly human and also taste of divine life. He provides, as it were, the template for being truly human and participate in the divine nature, as is said in 2 Peter 1:4. Bearing this goal in mind, let us look at why Hindu notion of rebirth is totally incompatible with Christian notion of salvation. The Church Fathers were very strongly critical of the concept of metempsychosis. The next slide, please. The word they used for what in karma thinking is styled rebirth. After Origen, they formally rejected any idea of a soul passing through cycles of birth and death. Why? Could I have the next slide, please? Because of the overriding desire to acknowledge the continuing integrity of each human being. As a modern writer puts it, metempsychosis does anticipate some kind of pallid immortality beyond the grave, but it shares immortality in 1,000 pieces. It shatters immortality in 1,000 pieces by subtracting the continuation of personality from it. The Church Fathers saw the uniqueness of each individual as maintained also in the afterlife. Hence, they emphasize that though one's soul may be separated from body at death, a person's substance, hypostasis, is not abolished, because God created the soul along with the body, and each soul is unique to that person. So, there is the orthodox understanding of the immortality of the soul. Belief that the human soul is immortal seems to have entered Christian theology via Greek philosophy. The Church Fathers were not unwilling to borrow from pagan notions, but in the process of Christianization, such ideas underwent a very subtle transformation. They remolded the ideas and they gave them new context and content. Metropolitan Hierotheos of Naupactos summarizes the Christian adjustments to pagan doctrine. The soul constitutes the noetic element in man's being, and the body the tangible element. Noetic comes from the Greek word nous, translated as spiritual intellect. It's the intellectual mind as well as the spiritual, and it's sort of located in the heart. I'll come to that later on in other talks. The soul is imperceptible to the bodily senses, but it's also not entirely immaterial. St. John of Damascus teaches that the angels too are called noetic spirits. They have an intelligible substance. They are called incorporeal because they are, compared with the grossness of matter. But, to quote St. John of Damascus, only the divinity is truly immaterial and incorporeal. A third crucial point of comparison and contrast concerns the relationship of soul and body. Both systems of thought hold that there, both meaning Hindu and Orthodox Christian, that there is a soul and there is a body. But the Church Fathers were always alert to the dangers of adopting Greek philosophical ideas uncritically. So they rejected any outright dualism of soul and body as inimical to the Christian faith. Both in its theology and its liturgical practice, Orthodox tradition has stayed close to a Semitic Jewish conception of the human person, seeing soul and body as constituting one integral unit. As expressed in the saying of Irenaeus, a body without a soul is a corpse, and a soul without a body is a ghost. The soul is not just in the body, nor is the body some kind of cage that constricts the soul. The soul is to be seen as the inward and the body as the outward expression of one distinct individual. This major difference is the reason why the karma-based ideal of a disembodied liberation is so far removed from a Christian doctrine of the resurrection, which includes the soul and body. The Christian position is essentially holistic, holding soul and body together in unison and treating death as a gross but temporary violation. Hence we lament quite strongly in the funeral services the loss of the human body. The disfiguration is lamented with great grief. At the same time, we assert Christ's victory over the death. Death is the ultimate enemy, which Christ defeats on the cross and by his resurrection. Therefore, when the Orthodox speak of Theosis, deification, as the goal of Christian life, the process involves the whole person, body and soul. The worldly, what the Hindus call samsaric, the worldly ego, the I, what the Hindus call ahamkaram, the worldly I is not dissolved or rejected, as in Hindu traditions, but transfigured. One's whole being is to be ignited, as it were, by the Holy Spirit. The energies of God, the Holy Trinity, are seen at work in this process of transfiguration, a transformation in which the whole of creation is caught up. Jesus' ascent to the Mount of his transfiguration is a kind of a preview of what we are to await. It's extremely important. And this transfiguration event is preceded in the Gospels by accounts of healing miracles where his divine energies operate to restore the sick in body and soul, setting them free to pursue their vocation to be deified. They are handicapped and he puts them right. It's stressed in Jesus' teachings that this process must take place in a communal, dialogic context of love toward God and one's neighbor, neighbor meaning everybody. And throughout the Gospels and epistles, it's emphasized that the pathway to divinization is via the cross. Jesus' own transfiguration is followed by his immediate descent again into the world, samsara, to face violent death. Likewise, for his followers, it's in and through their struggle with suffering and evil that they are to find their way to the divine. In the course of this struggle, the ahamkara, the individual ego, that a Russian philosopher Berdayev describes as embryonic personality, develops authentic pursuit in the depths of the divine mystery. Let's reflect briefly how an egotistical individual can become a truly human person. Berdayev says, the ego is only an embryonic personality. To become one in reality, it must commune with the Tao, meaning God, and the neighbor, and we, individually and communally. It's this communion of personalities, longing to be reflected in one another, which confers personality. Personality and being a person is actually the real spiritual dimension of existence. Love transforms the ego into a personality. Speaking on the same theme of love as the key to this process, the Greek philosopher and theologian Christos Yanaras gives us an image very easy to remember. But please don't take it literally. He's a great expounder of what it means to be transformed from being a mere individual to a human person. He gives a very simple illustration. Take a bunch of pencils. They represent a group, a species. Take a single pencil, it becomes an individual pencil. Now, if you give this pencil to someone as a gift, it becomes an expression of your love. It's not the same as an individual pencil anymore. A gesture of love relates you to the other human being. We all collect things, mementos from people. Why? Not because they are made of matter and things and they're beautiful, but they are reminders of the person, on the moment, the occasion, the gift. A gesture of love relates you to the other human being. It's in this relatedness of love that our individualistic ego is transformed into persons. This love towards God and towards others is where the spiritual is manifest. Now it's perhaps time to face some realities. The Orthodox Christian ideal is awe-inspiring, it's visionary, it's uplifting. But are there not problems attaining it? What about the obstacles, the spiritual struggles to attain it? Does not St. Paul talk about the struggle between the flesh and the spirit? He even says, I do not do what I want to do, but I do the opposite. Coming from him, one has to take note of it. Is it not true, as the Hindus argue, that our body gives us a lot of trouble through weakness, fear, anxiety, fatigue, loss of faith, bad passions? One can go on. What is the Orthodox approach to these problems? This is a very huge question and there are a lot of answers. So I will take them up on as the occasion arises. But today, I want to conclude with one clarification which is very necessary. It concerns the two words in the New Testament which relate to the body and soul. I think in the whole of the Bible, if I may say so, the two words are flesh and spirit. St. Paul had an exalted image for the human body. He calls it a temple of the Holy Spirit, 1 Corinthians 6, 19, 20. Despite this, and because of Christian talk of sin and certain forms of Christian theology and asceticism, many people, and moralism, many people see Christianity as a very gloomy, body-hating religion. It's a widespread misperception, but it's there are reasons for it. It's not without a cause. Even among Christians, there is a great deal of confusion about what St. Paul meant when he spoke of the flesh struggling against the spirit. In Romans 8, 5:13, Galatians 5:16-26. His true meaning seems to have been literally lost in translation. People mistakenly interpret the struggle of which St. Paul speaks as a struggle against the physical body. As Metropolitan Callistos explains, the conflict is not between body, soma in Greek, and soul, psyche, but between sarx, which is flesh, and spirit, pneuma. These terms are necessary for us to understand and get it really part of our thinking, especially the flesh and the spirit, sarx and pneuma. The two sets of terms are by no means interchangeable. I'm quoting him now. Flesh in Paul's usage signifies not the bodily, physical aspect, but total humanity, soul and body together. Insofar as it's separated from God and in rebellion against Him. By the same token, spirit designates not the soul, but human personhood in its entirety, body and soul together when it is living in obedience to God and in communion with Him. Thus, the terms flesh and spirit indicate not components of the person, but relationships embracing personhood in its totality. Flesh is the whole person fallen, spirit is the whole person as redeemed. There's a lot to think about there, and we will be probably returning to it again. Now, misunderstandings of Pauline reflections on the struggle against the flesh have left a legacy of joyless ambivalence toward the body. St. John Climacus, author of The Ladder of Divine Ascent, which is read during Lent in Orthodox monasteries, captured this Christian ambivalence towards the body when he spoke of it as my helper and my enemy. If the body thwarts a Christian's attempts to overcome sin and temptation, it becomes an enemy. But it would be wrong to presume that St. John Climacus simply rejected it. Rather, he sees the Christian task as to save not just one's soul alone, but also the body, which must be made holy in readiness for its resurrection. So let me remind you that for a Christian to be spiritual means not to reject, but to sanctify the physical. Christians, this is done, as I said in the last lecture, by the infusion of the Holy Spirit, the deifying energies we talk about when we talk about theosis. Christians generally might well benefit from pondering a dictum of Sergei Bulgakov. Kill the flesh in order to acquire a body. What Bulgakov means, a sanctified body, beautiful, full of grace, full of light. You can see it in some people, and especially in children. So, that is when the body is a temple of the Spirit to welcome the triune God. So we can say and pray, come and dwell in us, cleanse us of our sins, heal us of our infirmities, infuse us with your divine love, your divine light, and grant us the joy of salvation, O lover of mankind. I leave you to reflect on this note, partly because the lecture is rather heavy in terms, so plenty of time to ask questions and clarifications. Please feel free. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you,
Hello?
Dr. Christine. Yeah,
You can hear me.
can you hear me? Yeah. Thank you for your another second talk. Very interesting to see similarities, at least words that we use both in Hinduism and in Christianity, and how they differ, how their meaning differs. So thank you very much for this second lecture. I will ask our participants to ask any questions to you directly so they can benefit from your answer.
Yeah.
So if anybody is there who wants to ask a question, please open your mic and just ask a question.
Dr. Christine, thank you for that. Fascinating. Is there any sort of equivalent in the various strands of Hinduism to the Christian idea of the imago Dei?
Yes, in fact, I was thinking of talking about that in my next talk, which will be on the idea of divinization and theosis. It's rather heavily philosophical, so I thought I need a bit more time to make it into a easily digestible lecture. And therefore, yes, the answer is yes, because in the whole idea of the Upanishadic quest for Brahman is based on the idea that Brahman is the spiritual reality underlying all life and existence, and the individual Atman is a part of it, and the idea of the two being identical is strong in Vedanta, in the Advaita tradition. And then there are three different ways of looking at it. There's Sankara, Ramanuja, Madhva, and Madhva is the closest to the Christian understanding. I'll talk about that next week in some detail, but there is definitely in Madhva, who's got what in Indian terms is dualist, meaning he believes the soul is different, distinct from the Brahman, and so it allows him to talk in terms of relationships and reflecting the glory and things like that. He is the closest, but to understand him, because he was writing in response to the other two schools of philosophy, you have to know a bit more about that. I'll see what I can do in the next talk. Yes, and but because of the basic like the soul's relation to the body affects everything else.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, it does seem to me to be a constantly challenging aspect of Christian living, and therefore Christian thinking.
I think Dr. Christian is having some internet problems.
Yeah.
Yeah, just let's wait a bit. She'll come back.
All these books taken seriously.
Dr. Christian, can you hear us? I thought only India has internet problems. Dr. Christian.
Yes, her image is frozen, and I cannot hear her.
Yeah, I see the same.
Yeah.
Hello.
Yes.
Yeah. Is it Dr. Christian? Hello.
sure whether it's my internet.
Well, yeah, we can hear you now.
Can't tell.
Anyway, thank you for that response. I shall wait eagerly for the next lecture.
Dr. Christian, one person from Russia sent a question for you. Can you hear? Hello, Dr. Christian, can you hear us? I'm trying to send messages. Maybe she will get. She'll join again, I think. But that's strange, yeah. I always thought that only we have internet problems.
There you are, Clement. You're ahead of the curve.
Yeah.
I always thought
Brother,
that.
how are you, father, there?
I'm well, yes. Everything's okay.
It's nice to see you after a long time.
Well, I'm sorry we couldn't meet in May. That would have been lovely. I've really missed that opportunity. But it's a very slow process here. Things are opening up, but we still have no public church services. So I hope at the end of this month.
I think we have the same, going slowly. Nothing is open yet. We hope it will be. Actually, we don't have a problem here with our house church. It's open 24/7, but not for public gathering. Yeah.
Well, what about in your city generally?
There some temples are open because people can go there individually and worship, but churches are still. Yeah, Dr. Christian is back.
Yeah.
Yeah, can you hear us?
Yeah.
Okay. The question I've been sent is that what is the Hindu understanding of moksha? Is it the same as we have in Christianity, salvation?
We've had problems.
Hello? I think the problem is persisting. Let's again. Let's hope it will be better this time. May God help.
Okay.
Yeah, she joined again.
I am joining you, but if I turn the video on, it seems to disappear. So
yeah,
wondering whether to just answer the questions.
Yeah, your internet is not good today. But can you hear us now?
Yes, clearly.
Yeah. So the question is, what is the Hindu understanding of moksha? Is it the same the way we understand salvation in Christianity? And when someone is, for example, gets moksha, what does that mean? Is it only a soul without body, or some kind of different reality?
In the Hindu notion, yes, it is a liberation from the body and only the soul. What happens to the soul is given different answers by different traditions. Some say it just merges with the Brahman, like rivers flow into a sea and you no longer have any identity. But Ramanuja, for instance, he didn't believe that. He believed that there was some kind of I there, some kind of person. But he wasn't very clear exactly what that would be, because he had no ways of actually saying anything about it, because Atman has no qualities, and so it's detached from body. So it's left vague. And therefore, but Christian teaching is very clear, which means because the soul is understood as belonging to the whole person, the inside of a person, and the body is the outside manifestation. At the resurrection, Christ's resurrection is bodily, with all the signs of life that he had. I mean, the fact that Christ bears the marks of the crucifixion in the risen form means that he's not denying or somehow ignoring or blotting it out what happened. In fact, the resurrection depends on reminding you that it is the crucified Christ who is risen, not some ghostly figure who has no connection with his earthly life. That's extremely important, and it's also significant. It is, after all, the disciple, St. Thomas, who came to India, was the one who asked the proof, and he did. It's an extremely important difference. I'll be, as I say, in the next talk, maybe I should be on Theosis, and then we'll come to these differences even more. I can't hear you now. Sorry.
My mic was off.
Right.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. So another question is there. In the Greek philosophy, most of the philosophers, the pre-Christian philosophers, they believe body to be cage for the spirit, and spirit has to liberate from the body in order to go.
Yes.
So, and in Hinduism also we see the similar kind of idea. But is it identical, or are there some differences there?
Well, I think the Neoplatonist way of describing this particular division, some people say it was even derived from Hinduism, whether it was or not in Alexandria, but we don't know for sure what exactly, which rivulet flowed into what river, we can't track down now. There is a very close similarity, yes. And I think that, in fact, when you meet some very early writers, I always say that in Christianity, entirely, we look at the whole tradition from beginning to right now. I mean, I don't know all of it. Whatever I have met, there is what I call ill-digested Platonism. It's not digested properly. It sort of floats around, causing trouble. And Neoplatonism does the same. And it's until Maximus the Confessor in the 8th century, was it 8th century? Yeah. The kind of transformation of Platonic and Neoplatonic doctrines was very fluid. It hadn't fully happened. So every now and then you will see this. Similarly, Gnostic ideas of body-soul dualism also, in some very desert ascetics, you find that too. We don't have to accept everything uncritically. I always say you have to use what we have to, as one of the church fathers, Florovsky, said, we need the mind of the church fathers. The tradition doesn't mean we literally repeat everything they say, or kind of like a mantra. It's not. You have to. For instance, I'm a great admirer of St. John Chrysostom's homilies, and we read them daily. But he had certain views about Jews and so on, and their responsibility, which are extreme and irrelevant or dangerous in our context. We have to say, okay, that was his experience. He's also human, and he speaks about this passionately. We shouldn't literally take everything. So whenever you see the contamination of Platonism or Neoplatonism in Christianity, it distorts it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you for that answer. Does Anastasia has any question? Or Domitila? Or Unit, maybe.
Could I just ask a question, Christine? Sorry.
Yes.
Oh, yes. Hi. I wanted to ask, Is there a commonality between the Christian idea of Gnosticism and Hinduism and its relevance between the soul and the body?
I think so. The Christians met Gnostic ideas in the early years, and they do still. You know, they come in different disguises, but still the Gnostic ideas float around. And I think one of the very important, if you like, Christian heresies, I'm not sure whether it's strictly Gnostic, but probably, is Docetism, which is that Christ only took an appearance of the body. He wasn't actually really took a serious body. Now, that idea is very close to the avatar idea in Hinduism, because the avatars take a human body, Krishna for instance, but it's not like you and I. He's sort of, particularly in the, this is very brought out in the television version of Mahabharata, where Krishna always appears in this wonderfully light-filled, fantastic kind of almost like some movie figure. And the reason is there is this sense of he's an appearance, kindly dwelling in the human body for a little while, but he's not real. The Gnostic Docetists or Docetists, I don't know, they believe that. And so I think there is a connection, but again, there are so many different aspects to the Gnosticism of early days, and I can't really talk about all of them, nor do I know about all of them, but I might say something wrong, so I better stop.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Anastasia, for this question also, and thank you, Dr. Christian, for other answer. From your answer, I got another question. Since you mentioned Docetism, and so sometimes when we talk to Muslims, they say that your concept of incarnation is similar to that of Avatara in Hinduism or other pagan religions. But as you mentioned, the Hindu gods, for example, Krishna, when he appears on earth, he doesn't become a human, but takes some kind of form, just to communicate with the people or to finish his task. So how is the, I mean, we know that Christ literally, he really became human. He it didn't only appear as the heresy that you mentioned taught, but how when it comes to like for example talking to Hindus, when they also say, look, we have the same idea. You have Christ coming to earth, and we have Krishna or Rama, somebody else. How can we explain the difference in Hindu terms, the difference between Christ's incarnation and that of Avatara?
Well, that again is a huge number of things you can say. First of all, there's a basic difference between the two traditions, two faiths. One is, I would say, the view of how the world came to be, what's happening, is a cyclical view of cycles. One yugas, the cycles of creation. It has a beginning, and then it ends, and then another one starts. And we are on the fourth yuga at the moment, according to the Hindu calendar, Hindu cosmic calendar. We are in Kali Yuga, which is the worst. And it is said in the Hindu images that dharma, which is the moral law that governs the whole universe, was golden in the first yuga, and then it lost one of its legs in the second, and in the third it became weak and whatever, and the fourth it's limping on one leg. You see, they say this. What it means is the whole of creation is seen as continuously going without a beginning, without an end, endless cycles, like your washing machine cycle. And individual is also going on in a cycle. I always compare it to being stuck in a London Underground in the central line, in the circle line. You keep going round and round, and you get out, but even if you get out, you get back on it, and it just goes round and round. You can't actually, unless you get out of it and out of to another line, you are still going round and round. Who would want to get stuck in a circle line forever and ever? Naturally, Hindus want to get out of it. And so this is a simple example, but because that fundamentally the worldview is different, and matter has always existed, which means you have a view of creation where in the Upanishad the Brahman says, the Brahman was in such bliss, I will create, or I didn't say create, he just spins. It's a kind of an emanationary theory, comes from there. It's quite difficult to explain. But in the Christian story, and it is a story, there is a beginning to creation, and it's a creation out of nothing, means God says something and things come into being, and there is a beginning and there is an end. And at the heart of this story of the creation and story of our own human life, you have the incarnation. So it's history versus cyclical, endless view. That's the two. And the same with human beings. We have this one life. We are unique. We are distinct. We matter to God. And therefore, Christ came to restore us back to what we were meant to be, because we lost it. We lost it because we choose to turn away from God. And that is what the fall means, literally turning away, which means we lost our connection with God. We got disconnected, like this internet, it just keeps going on. And that means we can't last forever. Death is a breaking of that communion. If we were stayed in tune with God, we'd never have died, but we didn't. So that's the story. So I think one has to, without saying these things, and without also talking about the karma and the idea of a soul and body, doesn't really do justice to human life. We have to go in and say these things. Only then you can communicate. And I'm putting it rather haphazardly here because it's impossible. But anybody who's interested, I have talked at length about in my book on a chapter called The Karma and the Cross. We'll have a talk on that. Karma and the Cross will go further into this. Now, which one do you want? Do you want Theosis first or Karma and the Cross? The Karma and the Cross follows naturally from the soul and body thing next week. But whichever, maybe people want to know the one or the other. I don't know which. I'll see how I go. And anyway, I hope that answers you somewhat.
Thank you for the.
And you have to ask them.
Thank
After
you.
all, they have to read the New Testament, and finally, everyone has to face the question. I will only say, as Philip said to Nathaniel, come and see. As our Archbishop always said that. Come and see is witness. Come and see, come and read, come and worship with Christians. See what they're doing. And then decide for yourself whether it's the same as avatars. It's not.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you for that answer. And regarding the next topic, we completely leave it on you because you know better which to follow what. So we leave it on you. Does anybody have any question? From our talk, you can some question might have arrived. Your mic is switched off.
Hello.
Hello. One question, which again you may come to, and please don't feel burdened by this. From what you're saying about the cyclical quality of creation and the human person, I mean, is there any really vibrant teleology in Hindu thought?
I think as I say, because it's a huge banyan tree, depends on which branch you're following and where you're sitting on, as it were. Mm-hmm. And if you are a high-minded and intellectually, hungry, then you have these Vedantic traditions. But if you're a person who just wants more keen on experiencing God in a different way, of that. They do have, whether it's union or dissolution of self and whatever, or it's communion. And they do have, some cults that have developed from the medieval times on the Krishna cults, they talk about Vrindavan and union, communion, joy and paradise and things like that. Again, I have talked about this in the book, so I'm sorry to keep saying that, but it's again an idea of what is your idea of paradise, what is your idea of union in communion, total distribution. So there are goals, definitely. Otherwise, why would Hindus spend so much time seeking them? But my point is, ultimately, because I feel that I have traveled these paths a little bit and found them lacking, leading me to dead ends, and when I became a Christian, I can be fulfilled, but different route.
Thank you. Thank you.
But the word might just let discuss how many talks or what topics to cover and how long I can do it.
We didn't hear you.
One paragraph cross and theosis and divinization and yoga, and maybe on something on the elders, the gurus and so on, and prayer. That makes 5 sessions further. If I'm able to carry on, some of these questions will keep coming back because they come in different forms. Yeah.
It's always interesting to get more and more answers from you, because one time I may ask one question and you talk from you give one side of the answer, and then the next time you will give, but I mean the fuller picture. So of course we will keep coming with the same questions sometimes and getting more fuller answers, I believe. Thank you for your answer. Anastasia wants to ask something.
Yeah. Can you repeat that? I lost the sound.
So, sorry, Christina, I didn't have my mic on at all. What I wanted to ask is that you mentioned this idea of the banyan tree, and how in Hinduism there is the belief that we all kind of fall into this tree, and ultimately we all get led to God through it. Is that quite right what I'm saying? I just wanted to be sure before I ask the question properly.
Can you repeat it, because I lost some of the key words.
Okay.
Sorry.
So so it's okay. It's been a bit. So there is this idea of the banyan tree, and that all humans, or even those who practice the Vedas or whatever, Hinduism, or other religions, as it were, all fall into it, and we all kind of come to know God through this tree, as it were. So this branch-like ideology.
Yeah.
Would you say that is actually in some way reflective of some of the ideas of how some Christians of other denominations might feel about the same representation of God, that we're all Christians, but we're all part of this branch tree of God, and it's a very similar idea to the Hindu idea?
Yeah. I think the image of the branch, I would keep it just for the Hindus for a very good reason. And I think, I mean, I've been an Anglican, and I know I've been, I've been very grateful to the Anglican Church for preparing me as a Christian. So I have a different image, which one of our friends, Father Michael Harper, used to use, which is that, okay, the Orthodox Church likes to say it has the fullness of truth, and provided they don't boast about it and start saying nobody else is a Christian, I'm happy to accept that. But I don't like the kind of exclusivism and arrogance that sometimes goes with it, which is absolutely Christian. So we can say there is the ship, there is the big ship with the Christ as the helm and the counter as the captain, and there are a lot of small boats and rafts and heaven knows what swimming in the sea, and people are doing quite well. Perhaps they'll do better if they just got onto the main. They may not have. They may have a better and fuller. Or you can take a telescope, or I would say some of the denominations, they get some things right, but sometimes it goes out of focus. And so it's a believer to start with. One church, different theologies. This is what we need to bear in mind. And each of those theologies has something to offer us.
I'm sorry, I'm not hearing.
We all need to complement each other. And therefore, one has to treat that image of the
Excuse me, Christine, we are not hearing you. Your voice is not audible.
I got the majority of what she said, but I did lose some of it at the end there as well. Hello?
Christine, can you hear us?
So, what shall we do? I can hear you.
Yeah, okay.
No.
I hope next time we will have better internet. We'll pray especially for that. So let's pray and wish that next time we will not have this problem and everything will go smoothly. I suppose now, Anastasia is suggesting to use Zoom. We can use that one too, but I read somewhere that it allows only 40 minutes of free talking. I'm not sure. So I actually don't know if that is true or not, but I read somewhere, and 40 minutes are too less for our talk. I don't know, but maybe Anastasia can guide us in what to do and how to do on Zoom, so we can maybe have better experience of our talking, and we can keep with what you are saying with each other. Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Dr. Christine, for your time and your valued lecture. I mean, not lecture, your talk. It was very wonderful. It was enlightening. Because many times, even when we live in India, we live among Hindus, we don't know a lot of things. So it's always beneficial to know your neighbor's view, to know your neighbor's understanding, what he believes, etc., and to build a bridge, to have some dialogue, not just some kind of contention or some kind of they are different and we are different, and nothing.
We need to, definitely we need to understand what your Hindu neighbor is, where he or she belongs to, what tradition, and that sort of thing. You just can't ignore that. It's wrong to do that. I believe we can do that. I mean, to a point, but sometimes it's necessarily a struggle because people resist anything new, and ultimately we have to remember it's not enough to talk to people. Once anybody asks questions, my first reaction is, okay, if they have the name of the person, start praying for them so that God can give them the spirit to understand what you're saying and give you the spirit to communicate properly. Without that, I don't think there can be any proper dialogue. It's not enough to just present arguments or thump the Bible or anything. We need to say, I often have people saying, so-and-so is interested in yoga. What shall I say? I say, well, first start praying for that person, so that hearts can be opened to whatever the God is guiding you to say to them, and similarly open your heart and mine on also to say, find the right words. I mean, he said, don't worry about the words, I'll give you the words, and I think that's a very good advice. And so after that, you will find you can actually communicate. You touch a human being in a proper way, then you can communicate. But sometimes it's a big struggle. Often it is a big struggle, but that is what it's all about. As St. John Chrysostom has, I'll end on that note. He says baptism is a form of military enlistment. He says, like soldiers, which means we do have to suffer, prepared for the worst, and sometimes you may think you're not getting anywhere, but you don't really know. Something you said might have rung a bell or ring a bell unknown to you, so we just can't tell. So our job is to prepare ourselves and pray for the people and ourselves, then I'm sure we can do the job. After all, St. Paul didn't wait to see how many were converted. He preached the gospel. He didn't stop there to count the numbers. And he didn't worry whether it was a single person or a whole group. He just did what he had to do. So see the same. Yeah.
That's true. Prayer and the grace of God is very vital for any communication. If you want to reach people, if you want to, in everyday life, for your family, for anybody who you love, you will pray for them. And the purpose of our dialogue is to make people known about Christ. It's not just simply go and have some academic dialogue and come back and that's all. We wish people to know the truth. Of course, they also want to know, want us to know something, and we also want want them to know something. But the main thing here is, of course, the salvation comes at the end. So the prayer and the grace of God is first that we should do. Thank you for that also, because many of us are engaged in evangelism in India, because we are surrounded by different people.
Yes.
So that otherwise is very important.
Sorry to interrupt you, but I've just remembered once again, I mentioned the evangelical introduction to the
We can't hear you, sorry. Can you hear us? Hello.
Father Clement, I will say farewell, but I look forward to information about the next talk.
Yeah, I will update you. Thank you, Father.
Great. And give my best wishes to your family.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Bye.
I'm plugging.
Bye.
Basically, just an educational activity. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Christine. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your talk. We are looking forward for the next talk. Please let me know when it is possible for you, so that I can make announcement of it. And
Yes. I'm wondering whether Friday is better than Saturday. Or no, I won't be able to do immediately this Friday. Because I'm wondering whether the internet is so busy today because it's Saturday, I just don't know.
Let's try Friday. Yeah, let's try Friday.
Yeah, as I say, whether I'll be ready by next Friday. I could talk about karma and the cross because it will take up from where we left today. Okay, let's try. If I can, I'm in the middle of something else, but I'll see if I can put together a talk for next Friday, because actually, I don't know. The children are doing homeschooling, so that's one of the problems. No, I think I better stick with it. Sorry to think about it. That's the reason why I said Saturday, because they're not here at the moment. They're out. I have 3 grandchildren and doing homeschooling. Okay. Try again for next Saturday, perhaps Zoom.
Next Saturday. Yeah. Okay. So I will try to make preparation on Zoom. Maybe Anastasia will help me because I'm not tech savvy. So let's do it on next Saturday. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you everybody for joining us.
Participating.
Thank you.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Christine.